I've planned your announcement for the end of the meeting, but if you cannot wait and you're excited, you can actually share with the people now. Up to you.
Let's do it now. I don't want to take much time. It's just a couple of minutes to make everyone aware that we have finally officially released the next CKAN version, which is CKAN 2.10. I'll let you find all the details on the blog, which went live like about an hour ago or so. But basically, that's a combination of a lot of work by a lot of people. It's not definitely not a single individual that you can pinpoint it to, but I want to give thanks to all the contributors that have helped with that. There's a lot of big stuff under the hood to make it CKAN much more maintainable and future-proof. And you will see stuff like the refactor authentication layer for using Flash login, and there's the CSRF built-in protection. There's a brand new set of Docker Compose set up to get up and running quickly with Docker, thanks to Brett. And lots of cool stuff that you can check on the changelog, which is linked on the blog post that I just linked to. So that's it, really. Thanks all that contributed, and let us know all the issues and bugs that you find that no doubt you will find.
Cool. Thanks. Let me admit some other people. I just posted some links to the meeting notes and to the presentation that you see on screen. And okay, let's kick off officially. First, I'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And thank you for joining our CKAN Monthly Live number 16. That's the second for this year. I'd like to start with introduction of our guest. I think most of the people actually know him well. This is Oleg Lavrovsky. And as you saw on the previous slide, he will talk about a very interesting topic. He'll basically share with us how to survive into the darkness of any data portal. So he'll talk about how data portals powered by CKAN enable Hackdays, Hacknights, hackathons. He will explain more about what is that actually. He'll demo some tools. And I think it's going to be very exciting. Now, after Oleg's presentation, we can have a Q&A session, which will be probably about 10-15 minutes. It depends, because Oleg is planning to share a lot of things, so we are not sure with time, but I hope we can manage in 16 minutes. Then after the Q&A session, obviously, Adrià already introduced the coming of CKAN 2.10 release. So we've already done that. So maybe if somebody else has other announcements and sharing, they can share, and then we have the closing. Now, I've already pasted the meeting document in the chat. I'll do that again for the newcomers. If you want to add some things to the agenda, or you want to suggest a topic for the next meetup, for the next we have a topic, so you cannot, but for future meetups, you can do it in the meeting note. And also, I encourage you to leave your contact information in the meeting notes, because we're here to connect as well. Let me admit somebody who wants to join. Okay. And now I lost my presentation. Okay. Now, before I give the mic to Oleg, I would like to make also one exciting announcement. We already kicked off our CKAN Monthly Live newsletter. This is thanks to Alex Gostev. He's our product owner, and all the team basically who helped for the realization of this first issue. You can see it on our website. There is a link in the presentation. You can click on see on the blog. Also, you can subscribe on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn, they have this kind of a newsletter app. And also I've created, that's a temporary solution. So I've created a Google form where you can actually subscribe for the newsletter. It's temporary because ideally, of course, we want it on the website, and we will actually do it, but currently that's not, it's not possible. So yeah, if you want to subscribe for the newsletter, just hit the form on the screen. I am not going to go into the events a lot because we don't have time. Just I want to flag two super important events in the world of open data. One of them is Open Data Week. I've already mentioned that last time. I would like to reiterate. Still call for proposals. And then the next one is Open Data Days of Open Knowledge Foundation. It will take place between March 4th, 11th. It happens every year. You know, it's an annual. It's community driven. People just share how open data is used in their community. So it's super interesting. I highly recommend it. A few moderation stuff. If you want to ask a question, there are two ways. Either you can raise a hand and go ahead, or you can wait for the Q&A session, or you can drop things in the chat. We'll make sure to pay attention. The meeting is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And with that being said, I think, Oleg, it is time for you to take the mic. And yeah.
All right.
If everything is fine. Access denied to Google Form. I will do it right now. Apologies.
Okay, so hi everyone. I've pasted a link to my slides. It's good to see you. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. I'm just going to switch to see if I can share my own screen.
You should be able to if I stop mine. Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's funny. I also have an access permission myself. Just one second.
You are the co-host.
Yep. Now it should work. Okay, so the link to my slides is in the chat, and I can hopefully share the screen as well.
I'll add it to the meeting notes as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Oopsie. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay, now should be seeing my slides.
Yep.
All right, one is here. Now we can really start. Okay, guys and girls and everyone. Thank you so much for joining the call. It's my extreme honor and pleasure to be with you today. So we have 30 minutes. Is that correct, Joanna? I'm just going to start my little timer here and make sure we stick on schedule. So yes. So you've heard the topic: to survive and thrive in murky depths of any portal. Is going to be my goal today. Calling this slide presentation a slide presentation is probably a bit too much. My laptop died today. True story. Just refuses to power on. So I'm using my son's laptop at the moment. It's all a bit hacked together, but that's how we will roll. So my topic today is fear not the data dungeon. And I just want to have, my goal is really to have an honest discussion with you and the community, and to share a little bit of my story, how I got involved in CKAN and how I use CKAN and what I see as the future of CKAN. And let's start off by just defining two things. I mean, what is fear? Fear is a kind of anxiety, right? I have a really good book here by Richard Sennett called Together. He talks about the psychology of the uncooperative self. I really recommend this book, but think about this. Anxiety is something we've known exists for about a century. You know, it's defined by sociologists, and it's one of the things that, you know, makes it difficult for us to start a new job, start a new project, take on a task, and a lot of it has to do with not being not thinking that you have the skills, the talents, the resources you need at your disposal, right? I don't think I need to define data, because probably everyone in this call eats, sleeps, drinks, talks about data all day long. Although I think we shouldn't forget that outside of our little bubble, outside of our community, we do need to define data. We need to keep defining data. That's a lot what I do as a teacher, as an educator. I sit with students. I take a look at their preconceptions of what data means. And to a lot of people these days, data is like, how much bandwidth you have in your mobile phone subscription. It's not data the way we think about it in the world of data archival. And the dungeon, well, a dungeon for me is where your fears go to die. It's the worst thing, the worst place you could put anything or anybody. And I would like us to consider maybe attacking this question. So this picture that I made here is made with OpenAI by their DALL-E 2 product. And if you know anything about the current debate around AI, it's made with the work of countless millions of unthanked content creators around the web. So it's a machine learning AI tool that combines thousands, millions of images on request. You write a query and you come up with an image. And there are some tools to work with the image results that you get. And of course, the tireless work of data aggregators. I think it's really, this is where I think we're seeing things go in general today, is that common crawl projects, that go and aggregate the web's resources and do it as open data, as opposed to, Google and other search engines doing it kind of in a proprietary way. They are the ones that are creating an amazing resource for next generation application. That's, I think, where that's the big fear that we need to confront as a society with tools like ChatGPT, but also maybe as a community as well. So I want to talk a little bit today about finding things online, because for me, SEO is basically what CKAN is about. And not just for me, it's for everyone who's ever bought CKAN, everyone who's paid money for CKAN. Let's admit it, they're paying for SEO. They want their organization to be findable on all of these search engines, even ones that do not exist anymore, and probably ones that will come in the future. And finding things online is, of course, a matter of presenting every aspect of your business or your topic. And sometimes it leads to certain misfindings. So, for example, when you do a DuckDuckGo image search, if you're one of those people who try to mix up their search engine experience, and you type in CKAN right now, and you click on the image search, you get C-CAN, the rap artist. And I think this is just brilliant. So I just want to introduce to you to this Latino rapper by CKAN. I'm not going to try. My Spanish is non-existent. I'm not even sure this is Spanish. But I'm not going to even try to speak this. If one of you would like to, you're very welcome to just jump in. And anyone native speakers here who could rap these lyrics for us?
I don't know. Joel, don't you know Spanish? Maybe not.
Not much. Adrià, I think, speaks Spanish.
Adrià, yeah. I used to do, but no.
Yeah, there's tons of people who speak Spanish here, but I guess that, like me, they don't want to rap.
Don't want to rap?
There's also kind of a history of rap in the CKAN groups here that might not go down so well.
Okay.
Well,
I definitely don't want to touch on anyone's feelings if I'm falling on the wrong page of rap here. But I do think the meaning of these words is not completely irrelevant. Translated with DeepL, it says, I'm a sniper, I aim, I prepare rhymes. I'm so accurate, I'll never miss. I'll make your self-esteem bleed. I got flow and rhymes, I don't need nothing. You want to record here? The quality is paid for. So I just want to give you guys that as a little bit of a topic. But I don't want to stray too much from the topic of data. And this is a picture of an audio analysis hackathon project done at GlamHack 22. Which looked at the textual and audio contact. I mean, like melodic content of songs, and inspected audio archives from different perspectives. Really cool hack that was done last year at GlamHack. and use this as a small introduction to invite you to GlamHack 2023, which is going to take place this fall. So check out those links. So apologies for the slight cropping error, but hello world. So if you don't know me, I'm a freelancer. I have been working on content management topics for most of my professional life. I mean, basically, it's a fancy way for saying I made websites for a living since I was about 14. And I got into the topic of like databases seriously about 15 years ago when I was a tech lead at a large company and got really involved in a lot of like, Oracle and SQL and, and then at that time I discovered the open data community, became active in the Open Knowledge Network. And for about the past 10 years, I've done a lot of work with Open Data's CH, which is the Swiss chapter of Open Knowledge, which I help to direct and coordinate topic projects in. And I've become independent through my work, and I've worked with lots of really interesting institutions and clients, including Switzerland's national data portal, Open Data Swiss. I was a regular consultant for them, but I also worked with a lot of other portal projects. I have a blog. I'm a regular committer. I'm kind of trying to wean myself off of GitHub, but I still work mostly on GitHub these days, where I try to do pull requests with deference. I think for me, open source as a community is an extremely important aspect of my life, and I realize how hard it is sometimes to understand each other. And I believe that open data has this amazing mediatory quality. Like, it really cuts across these kind of technology religions and lets us talk to people. And I've really had this privilege of working in this open data space, of meeting and working with people from like academia and industry and politics and everything in between for the past years. Besides that, I'm Canadian. I'm Russian by birth, which I feel very apologetic to say is the source of major conflict and war in the world today. And it is, it's an extremely difficult time we live in. I grew up in Canada, and I've been living in Switzerland. And I am a citizen of a destabilized planet. And I think wars and climate change and pandemics, they're all really kind of intertwined. And I also appreciate data and these worlds that we create to be an opportunity to connect with people at a more abstract level, to not get swept up by, hype and by media and the next big thing, right? I'm a bit of a space nerd. So one of the fun things I wanted to suggest to you today, I'm going to just put this as a link into the chat, is to make yourself a replicant, because I would really just love to get to know you more, everyone here on this call. We don't really have time to do that, but if you go on this link, you can make yourself a Star Trek character with a few clicks. Just be careful to take a screenshot. Don't trust the tool. The tool's a bit broken. The download link doesn't work, but you can make yourself like a little Star Trek avatar. And feel free to share that or anything else about yourself in the Google Doc. I would love to get to know you. And also, I'm a family man. I have 2 kids. I live with my wonderful wife in this apartment. That's where I'm broadcasting from today, with our books and videos and so on. So that's about me, how we're doing at time. Good. So my goal was a bit today to introduce 10 kind of hypotheses or questions. And I'm starting with something really personal. I love video games. I love playing games. I love making games. Ludum Dare is kind of like a weekend contest, which a lot of people around the world engage in. Is there anyone else here who's ever done a Ludum Dare? Just out of curiosity. Yeah, Ray, of course. Ray, why don't you tell us what is Ludum Dare? If you have your mic open.
Yeah, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Cool. Ludum Dare is a game jam which used to be every 3 months. Now I think it's every 4 months. Now it's every 6 months. You take a weekend and you do your best to make a full video game, whatever full video game means to you, based on a theme. Okay?
Yes, very good. Thank you, Ray. So the point is, they give you a theme. In this case, the theme was escape. And you had a weekend to make a game, and so that's what I made. I made a game called Freebie. It's on my website. It's Creative Commons open source. You are, of course, welcome to laugh, and it's a quick childish project. And I'm just using it to kind of as a metaphor anyway. There are a lot of amazing games that people make at Lodondare. I suggest participating, even just to explore some of the wonderful contributions people like Ray make on these game development weekends. The message I'd like to share with you is that I believe that open data is a kind of a honeypot in several senses of the word. One is that, as I mentioned, it's SEO. People have a really amazing website and they have an amazing institution that does all these important projects. And now they want to be like, open data is our thing. It's like being, organically sourced, or a bit like being a fair trade. Open data is like the thing to aspire to. And so you create an open data portal to make people think, oh yeah, this is a great institution, right? In order to attract people, what kind of people are we attracting? We're obviously people who are interested in data, which are maybe technical people, but maybe also researchers and people who'd like to dig into what kind of the behind the scenes of your organization, journalists and politicians or partners or the competition, right? So it's definitely a honeypot in that sense. I think there's also the honeypot on a larger scale when we think about information security, the structure of the internet. Open data is a proactive measure to put data online that would otherwise maybe make it online anyway, right? But to do it in a more controlled fashion, right? What we don't want is leaks. We don't want data to just escape out of our data centers, causing us harm. We want to really understand the process. And I think open data in that sense has been an educational process for many institutions and their IT departments to think about how to share data. And I think around this idea of open data as a honeypot, we could maybe have we could do a lot of positive things in these difficult days for cybersecurity. I don't know how about you, but I've spent like the last 3 weeks dealing with spammer attacks and botnets and that kind of thing. It's really painful for anyone in IT these days, and I think we could really play a role there. So that's my hypothesis. And please shout out if you think I'm spewing nonsense, or leave a comment in the Google Doc if we can discuss later. How to make CKAN hackable? Well, there's the obvious way, right? I mean, there's this web page, right? CKAN security practices and controls. It's pretty standard fare for every serious, web application technical project, is that you are kind of explaining how do we make sure CKAN is a secure product, right? So we've got Dependabots and we've got GitHub's CodeQL, and we also manage security issues. So there's an email address here, and you're very welcome to send in bug reports, right? There's also developer calls. How many people here are on a developer calls? Just raise your hand. Do we do a quick survey? Like how many people here actually take part in these? 2? I heard 2 dings. I can't actually really see who. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. We got about 6 people. Awesome. You guys rock. Maybe get some girls as well to join the calls, but you rock. So there's that. And the whoops. There's tools like OWASP, right? I linked to DINACON, which is the Swiss open source annual conference, and we pretty regularly have the discussion there about CRS rules and tools that externally can be used to test vulnerabilities in any web application. And I think it would be really great if there was more people in the CKAN community involved in running, basically pen testing of open data portals through freely available, accessible tools like this. But you obviously need some incentive to do this, right? You need to have a hackathon, right? Or you need to have a bounty, right? I linked to Open Collective, which is a platform I really use a lot these days, and they have a really nice bounty program. I did not see something similar to this in CKAN's world, but you tell me. But the thing is, these bounties and OWASP and security features, they kind of focus on the core product, right? I don't think they really extend necessarily to the API, and especially not to the users of the API, right? So one thing that I think we really should ask ourselves is kind of like, if we're going to be like super confident in CKAN solutions, how do we help also developers that build on top of CKAN to apply security practices to their products? Next thing I think is super cool that CKAN does is that it supports and champions data reusers. This is a screenshot that is part of the Open Data Swiss portal. I'm not sure if maybe a developer of this page is on the call and wants to explain it. just don't want to take any credit for it, but I love this page. It's based on the CKAN Showcase plugin, which is I don't know if it's out of the box, or I've seen it installed a lot. And the idea is that you show an application made using data within CKAN linked to the data, right? And vice versa. So you click on for example, the top entry today, Alti-Swiss, and you see that someone made this cool clock. You know, Switzerland. We're in Switzerland. We love clocks, obviously. Actually, it's an altitude meter, not a clock. But I mean, anyway, it's really cool. Or the map below it, and then you see what data sources did that project use. And if you're browsing the data portal and you see, oh, this is a cool data set, but has anyone ever used it? Oh, wow, there's in the showcase, there's an app right on the data set that used it before. And that's how you champion reuse, because then people can kind of connect to each other just directly, you know, developer to developer, and exchange advice or have a look at each other's source code and save time on implementing that particular data set. There's obviously some shortfalls of the showcase, and I think one of the major issues we see in like in Switzerland, I mean, is that this showcase does not get really updated that often. People don't necessarily know about it, they don't visit it enough, and it's, you know, we've been running a lot of open data events, and you know, I would say it's you also see very little unpolished work, right? So the showcase, even just the word showcase, it kind of suggests that it's something really like, you know, something that's usable, something that's you should really look at. And so there's actually the team behind the portal, they would be happy to have a better criteria. You know, maybe that's something we could even help them with, to help them to judge to what extent is an application worthy of being in the showcase. Because I would venture that a lot of apps which don't have a user interface, or like, you know, or even apps which aren't online, you know, but the source code is there for someone to download and try, they're worthy of being really good examples to follow, or just to share knowledge. So lots of work to be doing in that area. Another way I think we could make CKAN more applicable is through data workflows. This is, I don't really want to say much about this now, but it's kind of a new project that I've been tinkering with for the past couple of years, starting to go into it more seriously now. It's a workflow tool. It's kind of like, it's one of those no-code engines that you might have heard about, and it's open source, and it's pretty hackable. But it's all about, it's kind of like a rule engine with, you compose nodes and you put in these condition boxes, and then you can do workflows. Think about it as GitHub's CI, just made a bit more user friendly, and in this case focused on producing documents. And I think that a lot of when you think about digitalization, where are these institutions at who are trying to use open data to promote themselves? Well, many of them are still, doing a lot of like document-based processes. Heck, even a lot of the data sets we find on CKAN portals are kind of like PDF. You know, they're like one of those Excel files with a nice title and stuff, and yeah, not the kind of data we think we're kind of looking for. They're kind of reports, right? And I think that if people had an easier way of making their own reports, combining data together using these kind of accessible workflow tools, maybe they would expect their governments and institutions to do less of that, but provide the data in a cleaner form that they can easily pick up in such tools, right? And that's this kind of like, if we want more feedback loops, if we want more participation in a sort of a digital democracy, this is where we're going. But like I said, I'm not really prepared to speak much about how this connects to CKAN yet, although I would love to hear any ideas or similar projects you're working on. The big thing we need to tackle today is misinformation, right? If open data, if data portals have one, joint enemy, it's, this. This is a screenshot from a wonderful project called Suho, which is trying to preserve Ukrainian cultural heritage online by aggregating the contents of websites and data resources that are threatened by Russia's invasion. They've been doing this for the past year. They're well organized, well funded, as far as I can tell. I participated in one or two small data scraping exercises. They make it really easy to do. They really show you how, with a couple of lines of console instruction, you can start collecting data for them. And they have this meme wall. because memes are one of yeah, they're it's not funny at all, actually. It's an instrument of war. It's this tool of misinformation and maybe psychological manipulation on social media, and they're collecting this data so it would be used for research and so on in the next days. But this, I tell this to my students when I introduce to them the idea of open data and CKAN portals, is that one of the most powerful things that you have when you're accessing a website like a data hub is that you have that little lock at the top left. So click on that lock. What you get is the little pop-up window saying, oh, there's an SSL certificate, right? And that basic principle of web authentication, SSL, when you use that as a metaphor to extend to, look, I mean, you use this this domain name next to the lock, you can trust this domain because it's opendata.swiss or whatever the CKAN portal is. You go to the root of the domain, it explains to you. You look at the bottom of the footer, you see the the right visual and textual information that to evaluate authenticity. I mean, whether it's phishing mails or Russian disinformation campaigns, we need to teach more people to navigate a web of lies. And one of the things that data catalogs could certainly play a bigger role at is this. And one of the ways I think we could more easily do that is just helping people to take a bit of this, a bit of data, and start using it for their own purposes. We need something like PowerPoint for for the data age. Conscious of time, I'm just going to skip through on here. I'm going to just say not all user journeys start at the landing page. If we're going to hack CKAN, we need to start not at the nicer parts, but we need to push in, look at how are people landing on CKAN through Google and so on. This is the kind of thing you typically don't see when you're just a user or even a developer of a CKAN portal. But I've been having a lot of conversation with the owners of CKAN portals about their analytics. Like OpenData Swiss actually puts its analytics as a data set in its own catalog. I really encourage everyone to do that, right? Just see how is search engine traffic and so on. How is your data being discovered, right? And I think that this is kind of like, this is the way that we see how is data actually seen by average everyday users who maybe not, like in user experience, you don't expect everyone to come from the front page. And user journeys is just a great instrument. But again, like a lot of developers, they're not very well trained in user experience engineering. People don't have necessarily give people access to analytics. Even though back in the day, every web page had one of those little counters spinning linked to the analytics. And it would be really cool if CKAN would also promote a culture of open access to web analytics, and also GDPR conformant, alternative web analytics engine would be nice as well. Things like, yeah, a big topic for me over the past 10 years has been the kind of the thing that no data is an island. All data has a context. It's produced somewhere. Some people say that there's no such thing as data and geodata. Like every data set has geographical information. It's just usually not, it's not necessarily well preserved. It was created somewhere by somebody, and it represents only a part of the Earth or only part of Mars or whatever. It's not, geolocation is not necessarily Earth-based anymore, right? But the point of what I'm trying to say is that when you think about open data, you also think about open networks. In particular, the networks that allow data to be transmitted, collected, and shared. I've been working a lot with a group called the Open Networking Infrastructure Association. They don't use CKAN. They use the Things network. It's like an open source set of protocols and standards for sensor-based data. You think about like low power, large transmission sensors, and within that Things network, there's kind of data functions. So if you want to store the data from your sensor for the next few days, you can do that with a couple of clicks. And of course, but what do you do with it if you want to archive it long term and so on? So they help you connect it to things like Azure, Google BigQuery and whatever, or Firebase or something, right? The point is that people who are collecting data, they will need to store it somewhere. They're asking all these great questions about data preservation. I would love to see the kind of open hardware and open data communities joined in more common efforts like this. Here's just an example of a project I wanted to say. Like, when you think about feedback loops, hardware projects are also great for that, because the data, you're creating the data, it's close by, right? In this case, we're collecting sounds from a sensor in the forest. We're trying to identify if a bird was spotted using Xenocanto, which is a large open data repository that's being used to train the neural network, and then collecting, notifications that someone in the field, researcher could go and check. Okay, is this verifiable, right? This works well when we gamify it, right? We use pinboards, rules, constraints, and scores. Constraints usually being 24-hour hackathon. And this is the Make Zurich event from the previous project, where people get together and do hardware hacks. And I would just love to see and connect across hackathon organized within the CKAN community, or let's say the data portal users community, both to further CKAN itself, as well as to create more and more of these applications that we can put in the showcase. One thing I really want to ask you guys is, how does data really get made? I'm putting here a screenshot of hoppscotch. Maybe raise your hand if you've heard of it. Anyone played with hoppscotch already? Nobody. Okay. Well, dribdat, that's the project in this slide. Okay, it makes it easy to start a project at a hackathon. With a couple of clicks, you can invite your team members to work with you on a challenge, to start uploading your notes, or even just connect everyone's GitHub repository in the same place, so everyone knows where we're hacking. Hoppscotch is kind of like dribdat for APIs. It makes it super easy to set up a project which your team could collaborate on, specifically for working with APIs, REST APIs, GraphQL APIs, whatever. And it's a really interesting community of API hackers that really design software solutions from a kind of an API first design mindset. And I think when we think about data in the real world, the industrial world, the commercial world, the academic world, people work with APIs, they work with contracts, they set expectations on the data being up to date, secure, and meeting their needs, right? I love the story behind Hoppscotch from Elias Thomas, the creator. He said, first as I was assigned as an API integration of an old project. That's when I came across Postman API. Right? Postman is what most people use to develop APIs. But I used a low-end PC, and I can't possibly afford to run another Electron app. So for that moment onwards, I wanted to make an API testing platform which is open sourced, runs online, have multi-platform support, have multi-device support, accessible from anywhere. Wonderful, really wonderful story there. This is a little bit this is a little bit how I've been hacking CKAN. I wrote the CKAN embed extension to make it easier to visualize data sets on third-party portals. Still, kind of maintaining on it. I'm starting to get quite interested in the Open API Viewer project. That's another extension which helps to visualize APIs and within CKAN itself. And I'm going to just. This is my last slide. Don't worry, Jona. I'll finish on time.
That's fine. Don't worry.
The hacking is going, and all these kinds of hacking, open data as a honeypot, open data as a way to boost your institution's credibility. These are the focus of this hackathon that we're organizing 1 month from now in Switzerland, in Bern. It's called the GovTech Hackathon. It's the first event that we're doing really like at the federal level, with the federal counselor as the hosting institution and many federal councils involved. And it's an on-site event. We are actually decided to have a no digital, like no online platform except dribdat for collecting our products. So it's not there's not going to be remote participation, but look out for this. Maybe connect with us if you're interested in supporting this in any way, because we're going to be looking at the way the government works and the way open data works from this API first perspective. And there's about 800 hours left until the event. And just as a last parting thought, I want to ask you, I mean, you've heard me talk about all kinds of like hacking and mucking about with, data sets buried deep inside of CKAN portals. Is there any way we could ensure hackathons are fair, fairly meeting people's expectation, fair to all the participants? This is a topic that's really been itching me for a long time. And if anyone has an idea, please let me know. Thank you.
Nice. You're very good at timing.
I got tools.
Great presentation. Thanks a lot. Let's open the floor for a Q&A session. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, or you can raise a hand and go ahead. And I can see somebody's raising a hand, so you can go ahead. Joe, there was somebody before you, but yeah, you can go.
Yeah, thanks, Oleg, for a wonderful presentation. So, as we are like a month away from Open Data Day, hopefully my proposal at Open Data Week gets accepted. One of the things that I've come to see here in the US, at least, is a little bit of hackathon fatigue. And, because maybe expectations are not realistic, because I guess we're all familiar with the McKinsey study that talk about trillions of dollars of potential value of open data. And for the most part, that potential has not been realized. But I still look at hackathons that they serve a purpose of at least connecting people, so this, people of the same feather who are aspiring to do something with data, and that connection by itself is good. And I've lowered my expectation that you will actually create a useful product that the government then runs, to render a service. And I guess I'm wondering if that's your experience, and how do you promote and see hackathons nowadays?
So I think hackathons have been like, yeah, they continue to play a huge role for startups and community building across many domains. And it could well be that, hackathons have served their purpose as open data matures and becomes, the default, the new normal, right? Maybe we just need to pay people to sit down and do this as a job, right? I'm absolutely with you. The fact that people get fatigued when they're invited to, again, spend their time for free on the weekend solving somebody else's problem, right? I mean, as a person who organizes the events, it's a number one topic for me, kind of how to make sure there is a good balance of entertainment value, and actually productivity or community building. Dribdat, this tool that I develop, I kind of see a little bit complementary to CKAN, or at least the CKAN showcase, because it collects this kind of all this, this garbage. It's not garbage. I think it's extremely valuable, but it's like these byproducts of all these hackathons, all these ideas that were implemented, or maybe ideas that were discarded, even just to see which challenges got picked and which didn't. They're interesting data points, and they're things we can learn from, but definitely there's a lot of contents from people's explorations of data sets and how they compare the different tech stacks. And I think companies like McKinsey, by the way, they also, there's a lot to say about consultancies, right? But they see the value in hackathons. They're encouraging a market of hackathons. But I think it's one of many kind of instruments which are part of maybe this gig economy, this co-working, open public work. This idea that we lower the boundaries between people who are trying to work together. We don't need a contract. We just need pizza. Right? There's definitely a lot we could discuss about this, and I think this is really where my question about fairness goes to. And one of the basic things I think we could do is to really try to, as fairly as possible, reward contributions. Not let GitHub and tools like that be the only way that people get glory points for contributing to open source projects. This is kind of where Proxius for me comes in the future, is to provide people with really interesting, useful certificates that they can then use at school or in their office to, go through a couple of hackathons, learn what they need to learn, make a contribution, and then hopefully go back into the real world. But on the other hand, maybe it's also representative of this new culture of work. People are staying shorter on jobs. We've got a lot of, I'm a freelancer. There's huge amounts of freelancers around in the software developer community. Maybe it's also a question of, how much of a role do we have in organizing these events to make sure that the conditions, of tolerance and diversity are really being met, and really exercising a power. We maybe need to unionize hackathons or something. I don't know.
Okay.
All right, let's continue with Alex.
Hey, Oleg, thank you very much. Fantastic presentation. Really enjoyed a lot of stuff to jump on afterwards. Just a few brief questions. So you mentioned GitHub, that you're a regular committer, but do you want to move out of GitHub? If I understood you right, if so, what are reasons for that?
Well, it's the same, a little bit the same as my reason to stop tweeting back in November. It was, just following the crowd, the crowd of fellow tech and socially conscious people who started using Mastodon. I mean, I've been using Mastodon for years before, but now it felt like, justifiable and socially correct to make a strong statement following Elon Musk's takeover. And that's what happened with Microsoft bought GitHub, and that was like the first, but then they really added insult to injury with GitHub Copilot when people realized that their work was being exploited for AI code tools, and they were not seeing the rewards of that. Although personally, I've tried GitHub sponsors program. It hasn't really made it possible for me to pay the bills or anything, but I could see, I mean, I like with Twitter, like with Slack, GitHub is a great company, and if you really follow their development, they've done a lot, really bent over backwards to try to serve the developer community. But it's like inevitable, almost that, and I'm actually glad, in a way, part of me is glad that GitHub, the monstrosity that it is, millions and millions of projects being somehow supported, with China and whatever, locking it down, how it even manages to stay online, is amazing, right? So actually, I'm very thankful to Microsoft in one sense. But to answer your question, so I've been a GitLab user for many years. Don't remember exactly why. In fact, I got locked out of GitLab. It's wasn't pleasant, but I had to create new accounts. So I obviously trampled on somebody's toes at one point. And recently I created an account on Codeberg, which is the public Git-tear instance. I mean, the fundamental reason is that if GitHub is inaccessible, you should be able to run it at home on your own data center. That's the reason a lot of serious software companies invest into having at least a backup of all their code repositories on GitLab, or even have their own on-prem within the firewall GitLab or Git-tear server. I think for us in the kind of CKAN hacker community, it's a kind of software activism. It's hacktivism to say, we want the code that we produce is our most important kind of property, and we don't want to give away all our rights to Microsoft. And I think the thing with GitHub that's becoming kind of dangerous is the kind of software lock-in factors that you're seeing a lot with other, let's say Microsoft, but it's definitely also Google, it's also Apple. As soon as you start using GitHub CI, pipelines, it's hard to switch to GitLab. As soon as you start using GitHub's discussions or projects or many other collaboration features, you're being locked up. And GitHub Copilot is amazing. As a programmer, to see that, it's like, okay, go home. Your job's done, right? And but if you start really depending on the code environment, then you're going to have a hard time switching.
That makes a lot of sense. Resembles to me a bit of metal bands conversations about who is running a true metal and who is not. And if you're for open environment, for open data, I mean, it makes sense to preserve this value. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm muted, sorry. Do we have any other questions? I can see Ray posted, it's not really a question, but there is opportunity for people to submit their own showcases on Open Data Swiss. Yeah. And there is a comment from Joel that Copilot is scary. yeah, feel free to drop questions in the chat, or just raise a hand and go ahead. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, thank you. I can do it one more time. It's a lot of pleasure to have conversation with Oleg, really. So regarding the open web analytics applicable to CKAN portals. So say we have more than 2,000 CKAN portals, actually much more. What if each of them would have open web analytics? Who would be the benefactor? What's the main use case? How do you perceive it?
Well, I think that's a question to all of us. You know, it's web analytics in theory is the best way to know your audience. So if we want CKAN to be successful, you know, to win market share as opposed to lose market share, for example, but even just to succeed in, you know, responding to the needs of its communities, which are kind of shifting. You know, the reason you might build a portal could be completely different from the reasons when 1 year later. I should mention that actually I'm helping to launch a new CKAN portal right now, and there's a lot of this kind of decisions about which organizations to push the hardest to put their, you know, to publish their data first, you know, for the launch, you know, and that might, those organizations that are on board today, they might really be gone tomorrow, or, you know, or people just might not be interested in them, right? And I think we also have an opportunity to, just like any kind of good web design agency that you go to create a website with, they will teach you the power of SEO to optimize not just your web presence, but potentially your product. I mean, today there's no such thing as a purely physical product, right? So it's all intertwined, right? And I think partly for me, it's kind of thinking a bit this through. So how do we market data? How do we respond to people's needs? And I mean, that's not just, I mean, I think for me, this, you know, CKAN is one of the kind of the old guard of data portals online. It's kind of close spiritually to, you know, all those you know, web of data initiatives, even just like, you know, things like Yahoo, you know, these catalogs, right? Or CRAN, you know, the R archive and so on. You know, you're trying to organize all this web of information. There's so many ways of accessing that. So within web analytics, we should definitely also include things like API calls, and maybe think about how to include the data of data users. You know, so if someone creates an app in the showcase that's getting lots of traffic, wouldn't it be great to see that? You know, to see that data is being reused a lot. I gave a talk on this actually a few years ago at the World Information Architecture Summit or something. Anyway, they wanted to data nerd, and I made a whole talk about how to be nerdy with web analytics data. It was fun.
That's interesting. That's really out of big interest to me. So I joined CKAN some time ago, and we were talking about features. So as a product contributor, and we were talking about features at the start. And for now, it's mostly product communication, because if no one knows what happens, if no one knows that stuff exists, it kind of doesn't exist. This is the biggest kind of gap to fix.
Mm-hmm.
A bit easier to talk about stuff that exists than to create new stuff out of nothing. So.
That reminds me, you know, a treasure trove of analytics could also be from requests. I had a project a few years ago called the Open Data Button, which was like a browser extension which people could click whenever they're frustrated by the inaccessibility of a data set. And then that became the Open Access button, where we kind of joined forces with this larger open access initiative. And of course, in every data portal, you have some kind of contact form for requesting data, right? But thinking a bit more how to capture people's needs, how to create analytics for these frustrations, these missed Google searches or whatever, that would be amazing too.
Yep, makes perfect sense. Actually, several thoughts in your response. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I can see there is a discussion going on in chat. Maybe Augusto, you wanna say a few words so that I don't read your comments, if you want, or not? Are you here?
I think he mentioned his mic not being
Oh,
accessible.
okay. I didn't get that. Okay, so okay, then I'll read what he's written. So the Brazilian Open Data Portal was renovated in November. They completely removed the portal API. Yesterday, they launched a new API completely incompatible with CKAN, breaking existing data update ETL process and forcing everyone to develop new processes. That's not cool. And yeah, the new API specification was not disclosed in advance, and CKAN is used only in the backend. He's assuming. Yeah.
Actually, Joanna, I have a quick comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like I also said that maybe Oleg, maybe one of the things we need to think about, especially with 2.10 being released today, and Alex, you're working with everybody to form the vision for CKAN 3 is the future of CKAN. You know, as we celebrate, I don't know how many years has CKAN been around? Since 2007, right? So 20. How many years is that? I can't add. 13, 14 years. So 15 years that maybe, you know, like what sometimes, you know, one of the things I really like, you know, API for the people, you know, answering people interface. And sometimes I look at the Census Bureau, you know, the only bureau mentioned in the US Constitution, mandated in the Constitution itself. And if you look at the Census Bureau's website now, they don't, before they used to start with just raw data, but now they start with a search with a form. You know, I want to look for commutes in Georgia, you know. So as we enter the age of AI and ChatGPT and everything, maybe we should start thinking about how do we answer people's questions, you know, like policymakers' questions, so they can act on the data. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm aware of time. We overran a little bit. I'll give you 10 seconds for last questions, and if we don't have any, we'll go to closing. I just saw, by the way, that Robert just joined, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah. So this is our guest for next time. He'll be talking for the Open Data Portal in Warsaw. That's the pronunciation, yeah. Warszawa in my language. Yeah. Anyways, that was off topic. So still we have time for one question, last question.
I guess everyone's really eager to get on with their afternoon. So
yeah.
maybe I'll just my question to you guys is, do you want to have a CKAN hackathon? Like we had a frictionless data hackathon about a year ago. I helped to organize that. I set up a dribdat. If you do, send me an email. We'll do it. It'll be fun.
Can you drop, obviously in the event, everybody can find your contact details, but maybe you can drop your contacts also in the chat here. And then I will make sure it is added in the meeting document as well. Yeah, thanks. Great. So, okay, guys, closing. We overran a little bit. Apologies. I just want to reiterate again, next time we're going to have Robert. I'm not sure how to pronounce your family name, so I'm not going to do it. But yeah, he'll be talking for the City of Warsaw Open Data Portal. It will be next 15 March, 3rd Wednesday of the month. Okay, if you want to have a talk at CKAN Monthly Live, you can fill out the form in the presentation that you already have, or you can write directly to me. You can see my email on screen. It's available everywhere. if you want to suggest a topic but you don't want to speak, you can do it in our suggestions for topics and speaker document. It is also available everywhere. If you want to get involved in with CKAN, or if you need help with CKAN, on our website there is a special page, ckan.org/community. You can find a lot of useful links there. You can chat with us on Gitter. You can join the developer meetings, which happen every Tuesday and Thursday. You can go on GitHub discussions. You can ask questions on Stack Overflow. And for security-related questions, you can write at security@ckan.org. All the links to our social media channels are available in the presentation. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn. We have relatively new LinkedIn CKAN page, so we need some followers. We share some interesting stuff. So yeah, and that's on me. Let me see if we have some things in the chat. Okay, so Oleg pasted his contact details. We have thanks from Joel and from Stephanie. Yeah, it was a really great presentation. So thank you, and see you all next month. Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.